My name is Constance Harper, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in my house for 45 years, raised 3 children here, buried my husband from here, celebrated every birthday, holiday, and milestone within these walls. This house isn't just property. It's my life, my history, my home. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the day I came back from visiting my sister and found that the locks had been changed. My key didn't work. I stood there on my own front porch, trying my key over and over, thinking maybe I was doing something wrong. That's when my daughter-in-law, Crystal, opened the door. She didn't open it all the way, just a crack, just enough for me to see her face. "Constance," she said, "not Mom, not Mother Harper, just my first name, cold, distant. Crystal, what's going on? My key doesn't work." "I know," she said. "I changed the locks." I stared at her. "You what?" "I changed the locks. This is my house now, mine and Derek's. You can't just come and go as you please anymore." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Crystal, this is MY house. I've lived here for 45 years. "Actually," she interrupted, "legally, it's Derek's house. You signed it over to him 2 years ago, remember? For estate planning purposes, so technically it's our house, and we've decided we need our privacy." She started to close the door. "Wait, where am I supposed to go? All my things are in there." "We'll pack up your stuff and let you know when you can come get it, but you can't stay here anymore." And then she shut the door in my face. I stood there on my own porch, locked out of my own home, by my own daughter-in-law. But here's what Crystal didn't know. Here's what she had no idea about when she made that decision to change those locks and kick me out of my own house. I wasn't some helpless old woman she could just push around. And by the next morning, she was going to learn exactly who Constance Harper was. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Click it right now. Then smash that like button, because this story is about to show you what happens when someone underestimates a grandmother who's lived through things they can't even imagine. Turn on those notifications, that bell icon right there, so you never miss stories like this. Real stories about strength, about justice, about what happens when you push the wrong person too far. And drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? I need to know who's here with me today, because stories like this, they need witnesses. People who understand that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even against family. Now, let me take you back. Let me tell you how I ended up locked out of my own house by a woman who thought she could just take everything I'd worked for. To understand that moment, you need to understand my relationship with my son Derek and his wife Crystal. Derek is my youngest, 42 years old. I have 3 children. My daughter Patricia is 48, my son Michael is 45, and Derek is the baby. I've always been close with all my children. After my husband Charles died 10 years ago, they rallied around me, helped me through the grief, made sure I was okay. But Derek was special. He was the one who insisted I shouldn't live alone, who called me every day, who visited twice a week. 3 years ago, Derek married Crystal. I tried to like her, I really did. She was 35 when they got married, 7 years younger than Derek. Pretty, ambitious, worked in real estate. But from the very beginning, something felt off. The way she looked at my house, the way she asked questions about the property value, the way she'd walk through rooms like she was measuring them in her mind. "This house must be worth a lot," she said once, running her hand along my dining room wall. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, updated kitchen, great neighborhood. Probably $400,000 at least. "I've never thought about it," I said. "It's not for sale, it's my home." "Of course," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I was just making conversation." 6 months after they got married, Derek came to me with a proposal. "Ma, Crystal and I have been talking. We think it would be a good idea to put the house in my name, for estate planning purposes, to avoid probate when, eventually." I frowned. "Derek, I'm 70 years old and healthy. I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon." "I know, Ma, but it's smart planning. It'll save on taxes and legal fees down the road. And nothing would change. You'd still live here. It would still be your house. It would just legally be in my name. I don't know. Ma, I promise. Nothing changes. You keep living here for as long as you want. We're just protecting the family assets. He seemed so earnest, so sincere. And he was my son, my baby boy. Why wouldn't I trust him? So I signed the papers. Crystal handled everything. She worked in real estate, after all. She knew about these things. The house was transferred to Derek's name. And for the first year, nothing changed. I lived in my house, paid my bills, maintained the property. Everything was normal. Then slowly, things started to shift. Crystal started making comments. Constance, these curtains are so outdated. When are you going to update them? This wallpaper is hideous. It really brings down the value of the house. You should really consider renovating the bathroom. It's stuck in the 1980s. I'd smile and nod and ignore her. It was my house. I liked my curtains. I liked my wallpaper. I didn't care about property value. But then Derek started joining in. Ma, Crystal has a point. Maybe we should make some updates. Modernize things a bit. With whose money? I asked. We could do it. As an investment, increase the equity. Derek, I don't want my house torn apart. I like it the way it is. He'd drop it, but Crystal wouldn't. She started bringing by paint samples, tile catalogs, design magazines. Just look at these, Constance. Doesn't this look better than what you have? No, thank you, Crystal. I'm happy with my home the way it is. Her smile would tighten. Her eyes would go cold. About 6 months ago, things escalated. Derek and Crystal started having problems. I didn't know all the details. Derek didn't talk to me about it, but I could tell. They'd come over and barely speak to each other. Crystal would make snide comments. Derek would retreat into silence. One night, Derek came over alone. Ma, can I stay here for a few days? Crystal and I need some space. Of course, baby. Your old room is still here. He stayed for a week. We didn't talk much about what was happening, but I could see he was hurting. When he went back home, I thought things were better. They weren't. 2 months ago, Derek called me. Ma, I need to ask you something. What is it? Would you be willing to move out of the house for a while? Just temporarily. Crystal and I are thinking about separating. She wants to move into the house while we figure things out. My heart sank. Derek, where would I go? Maybe you could stay with Patricia for a bit, or we could help you find a small apartment. Derek, this is my home. I've lived here for 45 years. I'm not leaving. Ma, please, I'm trying to save my marriage. Crystal says she needs space. She needs to feel like she has a place that's hers. She has a place, the condo you two bought together. She hates that place. She says it's too small, too modern. She wants a real home. She wants a my home, I said. Just for a little while, Ma, please. No, Derek, I'm sorry you and Crystal are having problems, but I'm not leaving my house. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay, Ma, I understand. But I could hear the disappointment in his voice. After that conversation, Crystal stopped being polite. She'd come over unannounced, walk through the house like she owned it. This place is such a mess, Constance. You really can't keep up with it anymore, can you? I keep my house just fine, Crystal. That's not what it looks like. Maybe you should consider moving to one of those senior living communities, somewhere you don't have to worry about maintenance. I'm not moving. We'll see, she'd say with that cold smile. I started getting a bad feeling, like something was building, like she was planning something. But I never imagined she'd do what she did. 3 weeks ago, my sister Margaret called me. Connie, I'm having surgery next week, hip replacement. Would you come stay with me for a bit? Help me through recovery. Of course. How long do you need me? Maybe 2 weeks, 3 at most. I called Derek to let him know I'd be out of town. That's fine, Ma. I'll check on the house while you're gone. I packed my bags and drove 3 hours to Margaret's place. The surgery went well. Margaret's recovery was slow but steady. I was there for 2.5 weeks. During that time, Derek called me once, just to check in, said everything was fine at the house. I should have known something was wrong when he didn't call more often. Yesterday, I drove back home. It was late afternoon when I pulled into my driveway. Everything looked normal. The lawn was mowed. The flowers were watered. I walked up to my front door, pulled out my key, and tried to unlock it. The key didn't fit. I tried again, nothing. That's when Crystal opened the door and told me I couldn't come into my own house. I stood there, stunned, as she closed the door in my face. For a long moment, I just stood there, trying to process what had happened. Then I started banging on the door. "Crystal, open this door right now. This is my house." No answer. Derek, are you in there?" Still nothing. I walked around to the back door, also locked. The locks had been changed there too. I pulled out my phone and called Derek. Straight to voicemail. I called again, and again, and again. Finally, he answered. "Ma, I can't talk right now." "Derek, what is going on? Why have the locks been changed? Why won't Crystal let me in my house?" Silence. "Derek." "Ma, Crystal thought it would be better if you found other living arrangements. The house is legally mine and she's my wife. She has a right to make decisions about our home." "Your home? Derek, I've lived here for 45 years. You promised nothing would change." "Things have changed, Ma. Crystal and I are trying to work on our marriage. We need our own space, without you there." I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. "So you're choosing her over your own mother?" "It's not like that." "That's exactly what it is. Derek, how could you do this to me?" "I'm sorry, Ma, but the decision is made. We'll pack up your stuff and you can pick it up in a few days." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Stay with Patricia or Michael, or get your own place. You have options." "Derek." He hung up. I stood in my backyard, shaking with rage and disbelief. My own son, my baby boy, had just kicked me out of my home. For his wife. A wife who'd clearly been planning this from the beginning. I looked at my house. The house where I'd raised my children, where I'd loved my husband, where I'd built my life, and I made a decision. Crystal wanted to play this game. Fine. But she had no idea who she was playing with. I got back in my car and drove to my daughter Patricia's house. Patricia opened the door and immediately knew something was wrong. "Mom, what happened?" I told her everything. Her face went from shock to fury in seconds. "That witch," and Derek went along with it. "He did." "Mom, we need to call a lawyer. This can't be legal." "I already know it's legal," I said. "I signed the house over to Derek. Technically, Crystal is right. It's their house now." "But you had an agreement. Derek promised you could live there." "Verbal agreements don't mean much in court." Patricia sank down onto her couch. "So what are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter and smiled. A smile that probably looked a little scary. "I'm going to remind them exactly who owns what." "What do you mean?" "The house might be in Derek's name, but everything in it, that's mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every picture on the wall, every curtain, every rug, every appliance." Patricia's eyes widened. "You're going to take everything?" "Every single thing." "How?" I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling your brothers and some friends, and tomorrow morning, before Crystal even wakes up, we're going to empty that house." "Mom, that's what?" I challenged. "Wrong, unfair, because I'll tell you what's wrong and unfair. Kicking a 72-year-old woman out of her own home, changing the locks while she's helping her sick sister, using legal technicalities to steal someone's life." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her phone. "I'll call Michael. You call your friends. Let's show Crystal what happens when you mess with Constance Harper." That night, I made a list. A detailed list of everything in that house that belonged to me. The furniture Charles and I had bought when we first got married. The dishes we'd received as wedding gifts. The pictures on every wall. The TV, the stereo, the lamps. The washer and dryer I'd purchased myself. The refrigerator I'd replaced just 3 years ago. Even the curtain rods, the shower curtains, the towel bars. Everything. If it wasn't nailed down and I'd paid for it, it was coming with me. At midnight, I sent a group text to Patricia, Michael, and 4 of my closest friends. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., we're moving, bring trucks. Everyone responded immediately. We're there, Mom. On my way. Let's do this. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. And I went to sleep with a smile on my face. Because Crystal thought she'd won. She thought she'd outsmarted me, outmaneuvered me, taken everything from me. But tomorrow morning, she was going to wake up and realize something very important. You don't mess with a woman who's survived 72 years of life's hardest lessons. You don't underestimate a mother who's fought for everything she has. And you definitely don't steal from Constance Harper. Because payback was coming. And it was going to be delivered in the form of an empty house. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My alarm went off at 5 a.m. I was already awake. I'd barely slept, running through the plan over and over in my mind, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. I got dressed quickly, comfortable clothes, sturdy shoes, and drove to my house. My house, even if the law said differently. When I arrived at 5:45 a.m., Patricia and Michael were already there, parked down the street. 2 of my friends, Dorothy and Helen, pulled up right behind me. Then came my friend James with his pickup truck, and finally Robert with a moving van he'd rented. Everyone hugged me. Nobody asked if I was sure about this. They knew me well enough to know that once Constance Harper made a decision, there was no changing her mind. Okay, I said quietly. Here's how this works. I still have the garage door opener. The garage connects to the house through the laundry room. That door wasn't locked when I left because it's always been just for family. You think it's still unlocked? Michael asked. Only one way to find out. We waited until exactly 6 a.m. Early enough that Crystal and Derek would still be asleep, but late enough that neighbors would be awake if we needed witnesses to the fact that we weren't breaking in. I pressed the garage door opener. The door began to rise. My heart was pounding. We walked into the garage. My garage, full of Charles's old tools, my gardening supplies, the Christmas decorations I'd collected over 45 years. I tried the door to the laundry room. It opened. We're in, I whispered. I turned to my family and friends. Take everything that's mine. Furniture, dishes, appliances, decorations, everything. Be quick but be quiet. If they wake up, we leave immediately. Understood. Everyone nodded. We moved like a well-coordinated team. Patricia and Helen started in the kitchen, carefully removing dishes from cabinets, packing them in boxes we'd brought. Michael and James went to the living room and started wrapping furniture. Dorothy and Robert headed upstairs to my bedroom, the master bedroom that Crystal had clearly moved into, based on the clothes I could see through the open door. I went through the house, pointing out what was mine. The couch, mine. Charles and I bought it 20 years ago. The coffee table, mine. A gift from my mother. The dining room table and chairs, mine. We'd saved for months to buy that set. The china cabinet, mine. Inherited from my grandmother. Every single thing in that china cabinet, mine. The paintings on the walls, mine. I'd collected them over years. The lamps, mine. The rugs, mine. We worked in near silence, just whispered instructions and the soft sounds of furniture being moved. It was surreal, packing up my own house like thieves in the morning light. But we weren't thieves. We were taking what belonged to me. After 45 minutes, Patricia came to me. Mom, we've cleared the kitchen except for the appliances. Do you want those too? I thought about it. The refrigerator was new. I'd bought it 3 years ago. The stove was older but still mine. The dishwasher I'd installed myself after Charles died. Take them, I said, all of them. Michael raised his eyebrows. Mom, that means they won't have a working kitchen. That's their problem, I said coldly. They want the house, they can have the house, but everything in it is mine. We disconnected the appliances, loaded them onto the truck. Upstairs, I could hear Dorothy and Robert moving furniture. My bed frame, my dresser, my nightstands. The only things we left in the bedroom were Crystal's clothes, and a few pieces I recognized as things they'd bought together. In the bathroom, I took my towels, my bath mats, even my shower curtain and the rod it hung on. If I'd paid for it, it left with me. We'd been working for about 90 minutes when I heard a sound from upstairs. Everyone froze. Footsteps, someone was awake. Move faster, I whispered. We need to finish. We doubled our pace. Michael and James were carrying out the couch when I heard Crystal's voice from upstairs. Derek, wake up, something's wrong. Go, 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 I urged quietly. We weren't running, we weren't panicking, we were just moving with purpose. The dining room table was already in the truck. We were loading the chairs when Crystal appeared at the top of the stairs. She was in her pajamas, her hair messy, her face shocked. What the hell is going on? She screamed. I looked up at her calmly. I'm moving. You can't do this. This is our house. That's our stuff. No, I said calmly. This is your house. This is MY stuff. There's a difference. Derek, she shrieked. D-E-R-E-K. Derek stumbled out of the bedroom, rubbing his eyes. When he saw what was happening, his face went pale. Ma, what are you doing? I'm taking my belongings, Derek. Since you and Crystal made it clear I'm not welcome in this house anymore, I'm removing everything that belongs to me. You can't just... Yes, I can. Watch me. Crystal ran down the stairs. You stop right now. You're stealing. I'm not stealing anything, I said. Everything we're taking belongs to me. I have receipts, purchase records, proof of ownership for every single item. That couch has been here forever. It belongs to the house. It belongs to me. I bought it with my late husband in 2004. I have the receipt. She looked around wildly at the increasingly empty house. The living room was bare, except for a small TV Derek and Crystal had brought from their condo. The dining room was empty. Through the kitchen doorway, she could see empty cabinets and missing appliances. You took the refrigerator, she said, her voice rising. The stove. I bought them. They're mine. This is insane, she turned to Derek. Do something, call the police. Derek pulled out his phone. Go ahead, I said calmly. Call them. I'd love to explain to the police how you changed the locks on my house while I was out of town caring for my sick sister, then refused to let me in. I'm sure they'll be very interested in that story. Derek hesitated. And while they're here, I continued, I'll show them my receipts for every single item we're removing. I'll show them the proof that I've lived here for 45 years. I'll show them how you manipulated me into signing over my house and then kicked me out the moment I left town. We didn't manipulate you, Derek started. You promised nothing would change, I said, my voice sharp. You promised I could live here as long as I wanted. You lied to me, Derek. Your wife planned this from the beginning and you went along with it. That's not true, Crystal said. Isn't it? Tell me, Crystal, when did you start planning to get me out? Was it before you married Derek? Or did you wait until after the house was in his name? She didn't answer, but her face told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I said. My friends kept working, kept loading, kept emptying the house. Crystal and Derek just stood there, watching their house being emptied around them. You're doing this out of spite, Crystal said. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son chose his wife over you. No, I said. I'm a woman who's taking back what's mine. If Derek had come to me honestly, if you both had approached this with respect and integrity, we could have worked something out. But you changed the locks while I was gone. You made me homeless without warning. So now you get to see what this house looks like when everything I've built over 45 years is removed. I walked up the stairs, past them to my bedroom. Dorothy and Robert had already removed the furniture. They were packing up my clothes. I went to my closet and started pulling things off hangers. Crystal followed me. You can't take everything, Constance. You have to leave us something. Why? I asked. Did you leave me something? Did you leave me my dignity when you locked me out? Did you leave me my home when you decided it was yours? We needed the space. Then enjoy the space, I said. Enjoy all this lovely empty space. I carried an armload of my clothes downstairs and out to Patricia's car. When I came back in, Derek was sitting on the floor in the empty living room, his head in his hands. Ma, please, he said quietly, don't do this. I knelt down next to him. Derek, you're my son, I love you, but what you did to me was cruel. You knew how much this house meant to me. You knew it was all I had left of your father, and you let Crystal take it from me. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. How did you mean for it to happen? Did you think I'd just quietly accept being kicked out of my home? Did you think I'd have nowhere to go and no way to fight back? He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. I was trying to save my marriage. By destroying your relationship with your mother, was it worth it? He didn't answer. I stood up. When you figure out what really matters, you know where to find me. But until then, enjoy your empty house. It took us another hour to finish. We took everything, the beds, the dressers, the towels, the shower curtains, the pictures on the walls, the lamps, the rugs, even the curtains and curtain rods. By the time we were done, the house was almost completely empty. 4 bare walls, bare windows, bare floors. The only things left were a small TV in the living room, a bedroom set Derek and Crystal had bought together, and Crystal's clothes. Everything else was gone. Crystal stood in the empty living room, tears running down her face, looking around at what used to be a fully furnished, beautifully decorated home. How could you do this? She whispered. You made your choice, I said. Now live with it. Derek walked me to the door. Ma. Goodbye, Derek. When you're ready to apologize, really apologize, you have my number. I walked out of the house for the last time. My family and friends had already left with the trucks, heading to a storage unit we'd rented. Patricia was waiting in her car to drive me back to her place. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house one last time. Through the bare windows, I could see Crystal and Derek standing in the empty living room, looking lost and shocked. Part of me felt bad, but a bigger part of me felt satisfied. They'd taken my home, so I'd taken everything that made it a home. You okay, Mom? Patricia asked. I'm perfect, I said. But I wasn't, not really. Because as we drove away, my phone started ringing. It was my son, Michael. Mom, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The storage unit. When we got here to unload, there was already stuff in it. Someone else's stuff. What? I rented that unit yesterday. I know, but the manager says there's been a mistake. They double-booked it. They don't have another unit available. My heart sank. So where's all my stuff? Still in the trucks. Mom, we can't keep it in the trucks. We have to unload it somewhere. But where? Patricia's house doesn't have room. I know, neither does mine, and your friends need their trucks back. I sat there, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do with 45 years of furniture and belongings and nowhere to put them. And then my phone buzzed with a text message. From Crystal. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a photo of the empty house with a caption. Thanks for clearing out all that old junk. Now we can finally renovate and make this house beautiful. You just saved us the hassle of dealing with your outdated garbage. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I stared at that message. At that emoji. At the realization that Crystal wasn't devastated by what I'd done. She was happy about it. Because I'd just done exactly what she'd wanted all along. And suddenly, I understood. This had been her plan from the very beginning. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I stared at that text message for a long moment. Patricia glanced over. "Mom, what's wrong?" I showed her the phone. She read the message, and her face went red. That manipulative little. "She played me," I said quietly. "I thought I was punishing her, but I was doing exactly what she wanted." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Crystal's in real estate. She knew exactly what that house was worth, but she also knew that with all my old furniture and decorations. It looked dated, outdated, worth less." Patricia's eyes widened. "So by making you take everything out, she got a free house clearing. Now she can renovate, stage it beautifully, and either sell it for a huge profit or rent it out for top dollar. She manipulated me into doing her dirty work." "That witch." I sat back in the seat, my mind spinning. I'd been so focused on the principle of taking what was mine, on making them face an empty house, that I hadn't thought about what Crystal would do with that empty house. "Mom, we still have the problem of your stuff," Patricia reminded me gently. "We need to figure out where to put it." I pulled out my phone and called Michael back. "Where are you right now?" "Still at the storage place. The manager is trying to find us another location, but the closest one with space is 40 minutes away." "Keep everything in the trucks for now. I need to think." "Mom, we can't. Just give me an hour, please." I hung up and closed my eyes, trying to think clearly through my anger and frustration. I just removed everything I owned from my house. I had nowhere to put it. Crystal was celebrating, and Derek, my own son, had let this happen. Patricia pulled into her driveway. "Come inside, Mom. Have some coffee. We'll figure this out." We went inside, and Patricia made coffee while I sat at her kitchen table, my mind racing. "Maybe you could rent an apartment," Patricia suggested. "Somewhere with storage space." "With what money?" I asked. "I'm 72 years old. I live on Social Security and a small pension. I can't afford to suddenly rent an apartment and a storage unit." "Michael and I can help." "No, I'm not taking money from my children. I've worked my whole life. I shouldn't have to start over at 72 because my daughter-in-law is a con artist." Patricia sat down across from me. "So what are you going to do?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Crystal wanted an empty house to renovate and sell. Fine. But there were other ways to fight this battle. I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Hello, this is Constance Harper. I need to speak to a real estate attorney, today if possible." An hour later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office. His name was Marcus Reeves, and he'd been recommended by Dorothy, who'd used him when her son tried to take advantage of her a few years ago. I told him everything, the house transfer, the promise that I could live there forever, the lock change, the eviction, everything. He listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. "Mrs. Harper, I'm going to be honest with you. The fact that you signed the house over to your son makes this complicated. Do you have any written agreement that you could continue living there?" "No, it was verbal." "That's going to be hard to prove, but there are a few things we can do." "Like what?" "First, we can argue constructive eviction. They changed the locks without proper notice, which is illegal even if they own the property. Second, we can argue that you had an implied life estate, meaning the understanding was that you could live there for life, even if it wasn't written down." "Will that get me my house back?" He hesitated. "Honestly, probably not, but it might get you compensation, a settlement, something to help you rebuild your life." "How much?" "That depends on how strong we can make the case. But Mrs. Harper, there's something else I think you should know." "What?" "If your son and daughter-in-law are planning to sell the house or refinance it, they're going to need clear title. Right now, you could potentially file a lien against the property based on your claims. That would prevent them from selling or refinancing until the matter is resolved." I sat forward. "How do I do that?" "We'd file a notice of interest in the property. It's a legal claim that there's a dispute about ownership. It doesn't mean you'll win the house back, but it does mean they can't do anything with it until the courts sort it out. How long would that take? Months, maybe years if they fight it. I smiled slowly. File it. Mrs. Harper, you should know, this could get ugly. Your son and daughter-in-law will likely hire their own lawyer. There will be court dates, depositions, legal fees. I don't care, file it. He nodded and started preparing the paperwork. 2 hours later, I had a legal claim filed against my house. Crystal and Derek couldn't sell it, couldn't refinance it, couldn't do anything with it until my claim was resolved. It wasn't getting my house back, but it was stopping them from profiting off their scheme. When I left the lawyer's office, I felt better than I had all day. I called Michael. Take my stuff to Patricia's house. We'll figure out the storage situation later. For now, just get everything out of the trucks. Are you sure? Patricia's house is going to be packed. I'm sure, do it. Next, I called my other son, Michael, and my daughter Patricia together on a 3-way call. I need to tell you both something. I just filed a legal claim against the house. Silence. Then Patricia, what does that mean? It means Derek and Crystal can't sell the house or do anything with it until the courts resolve my claim. It could take months, maybe years. Mom, Derek's going to be furious, Michael said. Good, he should be. What he did was wrong, and now he's going to face consequences. What about Crystal? Patricia asked. She's about to learn that you don't con Constance Harper. That evening, as we were unloading my furniture into Patricia's garage and spare rooms, my phone rang. Derek. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. Hello. Ma, what did you do? His voice was shaking with anger. I protected myself. What did you expect? The lawyer called. He said you filed some kind of claim against the house, that we can't sell it. That's right. We were going to put it on the market next week. Crystal already has buyers interested. I'm sure she does. That was the plan all along, wasn't it? Get me out, empty the house, renovate it, and flip it for profit. It's our house, Ma. We can do what we want with it. No, Derek, it's MY house. You stole it from me using legal manipulation and lies, and now I'm fighting back the same way. You're destroying my life. No, son. You destroyed our relationship when you chose Crystal's greed over your mother. I'm just making sure you don't profit from it. Crystal is furious, she says. I don't care what Crystal says. She's a con artist who saw an opportunity to get a free house and took it, and you let her. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Derek, when did you and Crystal start planning to kick me out? Before or after I signed the papers? Silence. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Goodbye, Derek. Ma, wait. I hung up. Patricia came over and hugged me. You okay? I will be, I said. But inside, my heart was breaking. Because that was my son, my baby boy, and I'd just cut him off. Over the next few days, I stayed at Patricia's house, trying to figure out my next move. My belongings were crammed into every available space. Furniture in the garage, boxes in spare rooms, clothes in closets. Patricia kept saying I could stay as long as I needed, but I knew I was in the way. She had her own life, her own family. I needed to find a permanent solution. On the 3rd day, I got a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Harper, this is Valerie Chen. I'm a producer for Channel 7 News. I heard about your situation from a friend of a friend, and I'd like to talk to you about doing a story. A story. About elder abuse. About families taking advantage of seniors. Your case is exactly the kind of thing people need to hear about. I hesitated. I don't know if I want to go public. Mrs. Harper, how many other elderly people do you think are in similar situations? Being manipulated by family members, having their homes stolen through legal tricks. Your story could help prevent this from happening to others. She had a point. What would it involve? An interview, on camera. We'd tell your story, explain what happened, and talk about how seniors can protect themselves. I thought about Crystal seeing me on the news, about Derek having to face what he'd done publicly. When do you want to do this? Tomorrow, if possible. We could come to you. Okay, but I want to make something clear. This isn't about revenge, it's about justice. Of course, Mrs. Harper. I'll see you tomorrow. After I hung up, Patricia looked at me with wide eyes. You're really doing this, going on the news? Yes, Crystal and Derek want to act like they did nothing wrong. Fine. Let's see how they feel when the whole city knows what they did. The next day, a news crew arrived at Patricia's house. They set up cameras in the living room, put a microphone on me, asked me to tell my story. And I did. I told them everything. About signing over the house, with the promise I could stay forever. About going to help my sister, and coming back to change locks. About being locked out of my own home. About my son choosing his wife over his mother. The interviewer, Valerie, was sympathetic and professional. What do you want people to know, Mrs. Harper? I want them to know that this happens, that families take advantage of their elderly relatives, that you can't trust legal documents unless you have everything in writing, and that I want other seniors to be smarter than I was. What would you say to your son if he were watching this? I looked directly into the camera. Derek, I raised you better than this. Your father would be ashamed. And until you make this right, don't bother calling me. After the interview, Valerie said the story would air in 2 days, on the evening news. I thanked her, and the crew left. Patricia looked at me. Mom, once this airs, there's no taking it back. I don't want to take it back. Derek and Crystal need to face what they've done. 2 days later, the story aired. Within an hour, my phone was ringing nonstop. Friends calling to offer support. Strangers calling to share their own stories. And then Derek called. Ma, what have you done? That story is everywhere. People are sharing it on Facebook. Crystal's boss called her. My coworkers are asking questions. Good, now everyone knows the truth. You've humiliated us. No, Derek, you humiliated yourselves. I just told the truth. Crystal wants to sue you for defamation. Let her try. Everything I said was true. You know it. She knows it. Now everyone else knows it too. He was quiet for a moment. People are calling me a monster, he said, his voice small. Saying I'm an awful son, that I should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. Ma. Derek, you had a choice. You could have handled this with honesty and compassion. Instead, you lied to me, manipulated me, and threw me out of my own home. What did you think would happen? I thought you'd just accept it, find somewhere else to live. Accept being homeless at 72. Derek, do you hear yourself? He started crying. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Crystal kept pushing and pushing, and I just wanted her to be happy. I thought if I gave her this, she'd finally be satisfied. And is she? Is Crystal satisfied now? Silence. Derek. She's leaving me, he whispered. She said this was all my fault, that I should have kept you under control, that now the house is worthless because of your legal claim and the bad publicity. She's filing for divorce. Part of me wanted to feel victorious. But mostly, I just felt sad. I'm sorry, Derek. Are you? Because it feels like you destroyed my life. No, son. You destroyed your own life when you chose greed over family. I just made sure you couldn't profit from it. What am I supposed to do now, Ma? Grow up, take responsibility, and maybe eventually try to make amends. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, Derek. What you did hurt me more than anything else in my life. You took away my home, my security, my sense of belonging, and you did it without even warning me. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, but maybe it's a start. After we hung up, I sat there feeling emotionally exhausted. Patricia came and sat next to me. You okay? No, but I will be. My phone buzzed with a text message. From an unknown number. Mrs. Harper, my name is Elizabeth Crandall. I'm a real estate attorney who saw your story on the news. I'd like to offer you my services pro bono. What happened to you is unconscionable, and I believe we can win your case. Please call me." I stared at that message. Then I started laughing. Not funny laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes when you realize the universe has a sense of irony. Crystal had tried to con me out of my house. And now, a pro bono lawyer was offering to help me fight back. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. The next morning, I called Elizabeth Crandall. She answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Harper, thank you for calling. I've been hoping to hear from you." "Why would you want to help me? You don't even know me." "Because I saw myself in your story," she said. 10 years ago, my mother went through something similar. Her second husband convinced her to put everything in his name, then kicked her out when she got sick. By the time we realized what was happening, he'd sold everything and disappeared. We never got justice for her. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be ready to fight, because I want to help you get your house back." The other lawyer said that was unlikely. "The other lawyer isn't me. I specialize in elder law and estate disputes. I've won cases like this before. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible." Hope bloomed in my chest. "What do we need to do?" "First, I need to meet with you. Go through everything. Every document, every conversation, every promise that was made. Then we build a case." We scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. When I arrived at her office, Elizabeth was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with sharp eyes and a confident handshake. "Tell me everything," she said, "from the beginning." I spent 2 hours walking her through the entire situation. She took detailed notes, asked pointed questions, and several times made sounds of disgust at what Derek and Crystal had done. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Okay, here's what we're dealing with. Legally, the house is in Derek's name. That's a fact. But there are several angles we can pursue." "Like what?" "First, constructive fraud. You signed those papers based on specific promises that weren't kept. That's a form of fraud, even if it wasn't written down." "But how do we prove the promises were made?" "Witnesses. Anyone who heard Derek tell you nothing would change. Anyone who heard him promise you could live there forever." I thought about it. My other children, Patricia and Michael, they were there when Derek first brought up the idea. They heard him make those promises. "Good. Anyone else?" "My sister, Margaret. I called her right after I signed the papers and told her what Derek had promised." "Perfect. We can use their testimony." Second angle, undue influence. Derek had a position of trust as your son. He used that trust to manipulate you into signing away your biggest asset. "Will that work?" "It can, especially combined with the fact that you were 70 years old when you signed, that you didn't have independent legal counsel, and that you received no compensation for a $400,000 asset." I felt a flutter of real hope. "What else?" "Third, we argue for a constructive trust or implied life estate. The law recognizes that sometimes agreements exist even when they're not written down. If we can prove Derek promised you lifetime occupancy in exchange for the house, the court might enforce that promise, even though it wasn't in writing." "Yes, it's harder to prove, but it's possible, especially with witness testimony and the fact that you lived there for 45 years before the transfer." "And the legal claim I already filed." "That was smart. It's buying us time and preventing them from selling. But we need to move fast. Crystal will hire a good lawyer and they'll try to get your claim dismissed." "What do I need to do?" "Sign this retainer agreement. Give me permission to represent you. Then start gathering evidence. Documents, photos, emails, text messages, anything that shows the relationship between you and that house and any promises Derek made." I signed the papers without hesitation. "One more thing," Elizabeth said. "The news story you did, that helps us. It establishes a public record of what happened, but it also means this case is going to be high profile. Are you ready for that?" "After what Crystal and Derek did to me, I'm ready for anything." She smiled. "Good, because we're going to war." Over the next 2 weeks, Elizabeth worked fast. She interviewed Patricia and Michael. who both confirmed they'd heard Derek promise I could live in the house forever. She talked to Margaret, who remembered the phone call where I'd told her about Derek's promises. She gathered documentation showing I'd lived in that house for 45 years, paid all the utilities and maintenance, and had every right to consider it my home. She also found something interesting. Crystal had filed paperwork to create an LLC 3 days after the locks were changed. The purpose of the LLC? Real estate investment and property flipping. She was planning this from the beginning, Elizabeth said, showing me the documents. She married Derek, convinced him to get the house in his name, then kicked you out so she could flip it for profit. Can we prove that? We can create a very compelling narrative. Crystal works in real estate. She knows property values. She married Derek 3 years ago and immediately started talking about the house. Within months, she's pushing to get it in Derek's name. Then the moment it's legally possible, she kicks you out and files an LLC to flip properties. The timeline alone is damning. What does Derek say about all this? His lawyer claims it was just about them needing privacy, that you were living with them and they needed their own space. I wasn't living with them. I lived in my own house that they stole. I know, and we're going to make sure the judge knows that too. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, the news story continued to circulate. I received dozens of letters and emails from people sharing their own stories of family betrayal. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a woman named Grace Peterson. Dear Mrs. Harper, I saw your story on the news and I had to write. 5 years ago, my son convinced me to sign over my house for tax purposes. Within a year, he'd kicked me out and sold it. I lost everything. I didn't know how to fight back, so I just accepted it. But you're fighting. You're standing up. And even if you don't win, you're showing people like me that we deserve better. Thank you for being brave enough to tell your story. Grace. I wrote her back, telling her about Elizabeth and suggesting she might have legal options even 5 years later. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every elderly person who'd been taken advantage of by their own family. The week before the court date, Derek called me. Ma, can we talk, in person? Why? Because I need to explain, to apologize, too, to try to make this right. I almost said no, but something in his voice made me hesitate. Okay, Patricia's house, tomorrow at 2 p.m. He showed up exactly on time, looking thinner than I'd seen him in years. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hair was messy. He looked broken. Come in, I said. We sat in Patricia's living room. She'd offered to leave, but I asked her to stay. I wanted a witness. Talk, I said to Derek. He took a deep breath. Crystal left me, filed for divorce, moved out. She took everything from the condo and just left. I know, you told me. What you don't know is what I found after she left. What? He pulled out a folder and handed it to me. Inside were documents, plans, communications. I started reading. It was an email thread between Crystal and a business partner from 2 years ago. Crystal, I've got the perfect property. 3-bedroom house in a great neighborhood. Currently occupied by Derek's mother, but she's old and we can work around that. Partner, how do you plan to acquire it? Crystal, Derek's getting her to sign it over for estate planning. Once it's in his name, we get her out and flip it. Easy profit. Partner, what if she won't leave? Crystal, she will, one way or another. I felt sick. There's more, Derek said quietly. More emails, more plans, details about how Crystal had researched my financial situation, determined I had no resources to fight back, and planned the entire scheme before she even married Derek. She played me, Derek said, his voice shaking. She never loved me, she just wanted the house. How did you find these? She kept them on her laptop. When she moved out, she forgot to take it. I was looking for photos of us, trying to remember when things were good, and I found these instead. I looked at my son, at the devastation on his face. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, To say, I told you so. But mostly, I just felt sad. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because you were right, about everything. And I'm so sorry, Ma. I should have listened to you. I should have protected you. Instead, I let her manipulate me into hurting you. Yes, you did. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at him for a long moment. I don't know, Derek. What you did broke my heart. You took away my home, my security, everything I'd built with your father. I know. But more than that, you broke my trust. You lied to me. You promised nothing would change, and then you kicked me out without warning. That's what hurts the most. Not losing the house, losing my son. He started crying, really crying, sobbing like a child. I'll do anything to make this right, Ma. Anything, please. I handed the folder to Patricia. Make copies of these. Give them to Elizabeth. Then I turned back to Derek. You want to make this right? Yes, tell me how. First, you testify, in court. You tell the judge exactly what happened, how Crystal manipulated both of us, how she planned this from the beginning, everything. Okay, what else? You give me back my house. I can't. Crystal's name is on the deed, too. Then you figure it out. You fight her in the divorce. You do whatever it takes. But that house is mine, Derek, and you're going to find a way to give it back to me. I will, I promise. Don't promise, Derek, do, because I'm done taking your word for things. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Can I ask you something? He said. What? If I do this, if I testify, if I help you get the house back, will you forgive me? Eventually. I thought about it, really thought about it. Maybe, I said, but forgiveness takes time, and you're going to have to earn it, not with words, with actions. Consistent, sustained actions over a long period of time. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't just about fixing the legal mess you created. This is about rebuilding trust, about proving you're the man I raised you to be, about showing me that your father's values actually meant something to you. They do, Ma, I lost my way. Then find it again, and maybe, someday, we can rebuild our relationship, but it's going to be on my terms, not yours. The court date arrived. Elizabeth had prepared extensively. We had witnessed testimony, documents, emails, the timeline of Crystal's scheme. We had everything we needed. Derek showed up to court and sat on our side. Crystal was there with her lawyer, looking confident and cold. When the judge called the case, Elizabeth stood and presented our argument. She laid out the entire story, how I'd lived in that house for 45 years, how Derek had promised I could stay forever, how Crystal had planned to steal it from the beginning, how they'd changed the locks while I was caring for my sick sister. She presented witness testimony from Patricia, Michael, and Margaret. She showed the emails proving Crystal's premeditated scheme. And then she called Derek to testify. He walked to the witness stand, looking nervous but determined. Mr. Harper, Elizabeth said, did you promise your mother she could live in the house for the rest of her life? Yes. Did you intend to keep that promise when you made it? I did, but Crystal convinced me we needed the house for ourselves. She said it was the only way to save our marriage. Did you know about Crystal's plans to flip the property? Not until recently. I found emails on her laptop showing she'd planned this for years. Before we even got married, she was planning to get my mother's house. Crystal's lawyer stood up. Objection, this is hearsay and conjecture. Your Honor, Elizabeth interrupted, I have copies of those emails. They're entered as evidence. They show Crystal Chen researching Mrs. Harper's property value 2 months before she even started dating Derek Harper. The judge looked at Crystal. Is this true, Ms. Chen? Crystal's confident expression faltered. I was looking at properties in the area. It doesn't mean. The emails specifically mention Derek's mother's house and discuss strategies for getting her out, Elizabeth said. These aren't generic property searches. This was a targeted plan. The judge looked grim. Continue. Derek testified for an hour, answering every question honestly, including the painful admission that he'd chosen his wife's manipulation over his mother's well-being. When he finished, Crystal's lawyer tried to do damage control. "Your Honor, Mrs. Harper voluntarily signed over the property. There was no coercion." "There was fraud," Elizabeth interrupted. "Constructive fraud based on false promises, undue influence based on the trust relationship between mother and son, and clear evidence of a scheme to deprive an elderly woman of her home." The judge reviewed the documents for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. "I've seen a lot of cases in my career, but this is one of the most egregious examples of elder abuse I've encountered. Mrs. Harper, I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced." My heart was pounding. The evidence clearly shows that Derek Harper made specific promises about his mother's continued residency in exchange for the property transfer. While those promises were not in writing, the witness testimony is consistent and credible. Furthermore, the emails from Crystal Chen show a deliberate plan to defraud Mrs. Harper of her home. Crystal's face went pale. "Therefore, I'm ruling that the property transfer was made under false pretenses and constitutes constructive fraud. The transfer is hereby voided. The property reverts to Constance Harper, effective immediately." I couldn't breathe. "Derek Harper, you are hereby ordered to execute all necessary paperwork to transfer the property back to your mother within 30 days. Crystal Chen, you are barred from any claim to the property and ordered to pay Mrs. Harper's legal fees." Elizabeth squeezed my hand. I'd won. After 45 years, countless heartbreaks, and nearly losing everything, I'd won. Outside the courthouse, Derek approached me. "Ma." I held up my hand. "Give me a minute." I needed to process what had just happened. I had my house back, my home. After everything, I was going home. "Ma," Derek said quietly, "I meant what I said in there. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you." "It's a start," I said. "But Derek, this is going to take time, a lot of time." "I know, but I'm willing to put in the work, whatever it takes." Patricia came over and hugged me. "Mom, you did it. You actually did it." "We did it," I said. "All of us, we stood up for what was right." Elizabeth joined us. "Congratulations, Mrs. Harper. I have to say, that judge's ruling was even better than I hoped for." "What happens now?" "Derek has 30 days to sign over the property. Crystal has to pay your legal fees, which, given that I was pro bono, means she owes you whatever the court calculates as reasonable attorney fees for a case of this complexity. Could be substantial." "I don't care about the money," I said. "I just want my house back." "You'll have it. And Mrs. Harper, what you did, standing up, fighting back, refusing to accept injustice, you've helped more people than just yourself. I've already gotten calls from 3 other elderly people who saw your story and want help with similar situations." "Good," I said. "Nobody should have to go through what I went through." 3 weeks later, I moved back into my house. My house. Patricia, Michael, and several friends helped me bring everything back from storage. We spent 2 days putting the house back together. Furniture, dishes, pictures, all of it returned to where it belonged. Derek came over to help. He'd already signed all the paperwork transferring the property back to me. "Thank you," I said as he helped Michael carry in my couch. "It's the least I could do, Ma." He looked around at the house, now fully furnished again, looking just like it had before Crystal emptied it. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for all of it." "I know you are. Do you think someday things can be normal between us again?" I thought about it. I think someday we might have a relationship again, but it won't be the same as before. Trust, once broken, doesn't just heal back to what it was. It becomes something different. "I'll take different," he said, "as long as I haven't lost you completely." You haven't, but you came close. Over the following months, things slowly began to settle. Derek and Crystal's divorce was finalized. She had to pay me $45,000 in legal fees, which I immediately put into a trust to help other elderly people fighting similar battles. Derek started coming over for Sunday dinner once a month, We weren't close like we used to be, but we were rebuilding. Slowly. Patricia and Michael visited regularly, proud of their mother for standing up for herself. And I finally felt at peace in my home. One evening, about 6 months after the court case, I was sitting on my front porch watching the sunset when a car pulled up. A woman in her 60s got out and walked up to me. "Mrs. Harper." "Yes." "My name is Grace Peterson. I wrote you a letter several months ago." It took me a moment, then I remembered. The woman whose son had stolen her house 5 years ago. "Grace, come sit down. What brings you here?" She sat in the chair next to me, tears in her eyes. "I just left the courthouse. Thanks to your story and Elizabeth Crandall, I sued my son for fraud, and I won. I'm getting my house back." My eyes filled with tears. "Grace, that's wonderful." "It's because of you. You showed me it was possible. You showed me I deserved to fight back." "You did the fighting. I just shared my story." "You did more than that. You gave hope to people like me who thought we were powerless." We sat there together, two elderly women who'd been betrayed by their children, who'd fought back, and who'd won. "What will you do with your house?" I asked. "Move back in, live there, enjoy what's left of my life in the home I built." "That's what I'm doing too," I said. As the sun set over my neighborhood, over my house, over the life I'd reclaimed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Not for the struggle, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But for the strength I'd found, the courage I'd discovered, the realization that at 72 years old, I could still fight for myself. Crystal had changed my locks, thinking she'd won. The next morning, she'd found her things outside and learned she'd lost. But more than that, she'd learned you don't mess with Constance Harper. And neither does anyone else. Later that evening, Derek called. "Ma, I just wanted to say, I drove by the house today. I saw you on the porch. The house looks good, like it should look." "It does," I agreed. "And Ma, I'm proud of you for fighting back, for not giving up. Dad would be proud too." Those words, coming from my son, meant more than he could know. "Thank you, Derek." "I love you, Ma." "I love you too, baby, even after everything." Because that's what mothers do. We love our children even when they hurt us, even when they disappoint us, even when they betray us. But that doesn't mean we let them walk all over us. It means we love them enough to demand better, to hold them accountable, to make them face consequences. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, it means they learn and grow and become better people. As I hung up the phone and looked around my living room, my furniture, my pictures, my life, I smiled. I was home. Really, truly home. And nobody was ever going to take that from me again. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.